So here's where we left off. So I had given you a few to-dos here to create a journal object, which should be actually model, right? So a class, and then invoke the collection reference that we created earlier and see if we could have saved an instance of a journal. All right, let's go ahead and do that. I hope you were able to at least get yourself started there. All right, let's go ahead and create a model here. So instead of a Java here, I'm going to create a new package. It's going to be inside of a main. There we go. And I'm going to call model. Very good. In this model here, I'm going to create our journal class. So it's just going to be a simple model class, journal. Nothing excitingly, nothing crazy here. And I'm going to go ahead and create a few instance variables here. So string title, string thought, string image URL. We'll need that to populate our list later. String user ID. I'm going to also have a private timestamp type. I'm going to use timestamp from Firebase. Okay, there's different kinds. Time added as such. I'm going to say private string user name. And I'm going to create a constructor. First of all, remember we will have an empty constructor because that is what important. So this is must for Firestore to work, right? An empty constructor with no parameters in there. And I'm going to create a new other constructor here, which could have all of these other items in there if we wish to do so. And let's create a few getters and setters for all of our items as well, like this. All right, so there we go. That's it for now. Let's get rid of that. So back to our post here. What I'm going to do is let's go ahead and invoke, close that down. We're going to go ahead and invoke our journal. So we're going to create an object, right? So I'm going to say journal model, call this journal, it's equal to new journal, all right? And then I'm going to construct our journal. So I'm going to say journal.set title, and I'm going to pass our title that we're getting, journal.set thought, pass the thoughts, there we go. And I'm going to say journal.set image URL. I'm going to pass our image URL. We don't have our image URL, so we need to create that. How do we get an image URL? To get an image URL, we need to go back to our file path, right? Notice we're inside of our success listener, but we need to come back here and say file path, and we're going to invoke the get download URL. Now this one here, we're going to also have to add on success listener like we have been doing. So on success listener as such. All right. So at this point here, we're actually going to move all of this code that we created here inside of our success listener here. The reason being is because we need to get the URL for us to be able to set the image URL to it. So now notice that we have a URI that we're passing inside here, which is a path that we can convert into URL. All right. So inside here, I'm going to say string, call this image URL. I'm going to say is equal to URI dot to string, and this is going to be our URL. Okay. Very good. And I'm going to continue here. Say journal. I'm going to set time added. Well, in this case here, we want to set the time the moment that this item is added to our Firestore database. So I'm going to say new timestamp again, and I'm going to pass new object here of date. So it's going to go ahead and do all the things that it needs to do and pass in our date. Okay, very good. And I'm going to continue. I'm going to say journal, that's set user name. I'm going to go ahead and say current username that we created earlier. So journal.set user ID, right? I'm going to go ahead and say current user ID. So now, our next to do here is to invoke the collection reference, because now we have our object. It's time to add that object into our collection here. Easy. I'm going to go ahead and say collection reference we created earlier, .add. That's the method we use. And at this point here, I'm going to pass our journal object because at that point, it's all ready to be saved. Of course, I'm going to add on success listener here. There we go. And there's a lot of nesting here. Add on failure as well, new on failure. Okay, let's finish that up there. Now, because we are all inside of this main put file here, the progress bar, we're actually going to move it to on our success, because this is the ultimate success, right? Because at this point here, that's when we have actually created a journal item here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and make it invisible now, our progress bar. That's the best place to do that. And once that happens, I'm going to go ahead and say start activity. I'm going to say new intent, and I'm going to go from our post here, that this, and we're going to our journal list activity class, which we haven't created yet. Let's go ahead and create our journal list activity so we don't end up with an error. So I'm going to go here inside of our activities there. I'm going to go ahead and create a new, just an empty activity, paste in the name, finish. We're not going to look at it right away because we just want to focus on what we're doing. But at this point, we just want to get everything set up for ourselves here. Let's get, it's doing its thing. Let's let it do all the stuff that it needs to do. All right, let's get rid of all of this. Very good. So we're back to where we were before. Okay. And at this point here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to also call finish so that we get rid of this post journal activity, because at this point, we're going to go and see all of the journals that we've added. So it looks like there's a lot of coding here, and I hope you're seeing what we're doing here. What we're doing here, there's a lot of nesting. Let's go back to say here. So save journal. When that's called, we're going to make sure that all of our edit texts are retrieved, right? So all of the title and thoughts. We're going to make our progress bar visible here because we want to let users know that things are happening. Okay. And we're going to check to make sure that the title, thoughts, and the image URI are all okay. And then we have to create a file path from our storage reference, because remember here, we're going to be passing an image, and the image has to be in the storage part of our Firebase. Okay. That's why we have to infer it there. And we create a folder here called journal images, and we made sure to append something for the name of the actual image, right? So we say my image could have been anything, and most importantly, we had to append in this case here a timestamp and get seconds. That way, each time we add a new image, that image will have a unique ID, a unique file name. If you get anything from this lecture, remember this here. Otherwise, you're gonna run into a lot of issues. Okay, and then of course we have to actually put the file that we created, right, the image, into our storage reference. So we say put file, we pass the image URI, and we have the on success here. So when that happens, we need to retrieve the URL of our image that was just added. The reason why is because for our journal object that we're going to be passing to our Firestore, we decided to add image URL. That way it's easier for us to access it when we are retrieving all of the journals that we write onto the database. Okay, so there's a strategy behind all of that. That's why we have to do that. And on success, we get URI, we invert that into a string, and then we pass that inside of our set image URL in our journal. We set up our journal object. We then have to invoke the collection reference, of course, because now we have our object ready and we're going to pass it on. Okay, that's it. And once everything is right, everything worked fine, what we're going to do is just going to go ahead and kill our progress bar and start a new activity. In this case, we're going to take the users to our journal list activity, which is going to have a list of all of our journals that we've added. Okay, and of course, on failure, we will put something here, perhaps a little toast or log D for ourselves. Like that. I'm going to say get message. Okay, let's go ahead and create this tag at the top here. This is just going to be post journal activity. We're back there, okay? Remember, we have that else we added before. All right, so that is our method, which is the save journal. I'm going to close all that there, close all of these so we have more space to see what's going on. Very neat. So this journal here is being called the moment we click our save journal button. All right. All right, so at this point here, I think we're ready to test our application now. Let me go ahead and clear things up. So to make everything formatted there. So list store reference looks like we never really instantiated it. And we must do that. Otherwise, you guessed it, we're going to have issues. So I'm going to say storage reference. That's the beauty of Android Studio. It tells us exactly fields that we created, but we never really did anything with it. So I'm going to go ahead and say is equal to Firebase storage, like that. Get instance. I'm going to go ahead and get reference. We must get a reference to that. Okay. Command click. You can see there it is. I'm going to go to where else it's being used, which is here. Very good. So now we should be good. All right. Let's go ahead and take it for a run. I'm going to run again and see if we can actually add an image and also add a journal. Okay, there we go. We go all over again. I'm going to go like this. We can't log in yet. We'll do that next time, but I'm going to create another account anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and just say create account. And I'm going to say james@me.com, password, like that. Create. We should have good results. There we go. And even says James there. That's really good. Okay, so let's go ahead and add an image. There we go. I'm going to add a title here. This title will say my first thought. Very good. And I'm going to add here. We're going to have to fix that because we just want to have a hint. So this is my first thought of the day. I am grateful. All right. Moment of truth. Let's hit save here and see if something's going to happen. Okay, I'm going to open, of course, our database Cloud Firestore there. Okay, ready? Okay, let's see. And voila, I think everything worked fine. No issues here. Let's refresh this and see if we see a journal collection there. And there it is, journal collection. Click on that. We have it, and click on that. Look at that. We have our image. That's very good. We have this is my first thought, as you can see there. And it even has our time added today, right? And my thought and user ID and username. Very good. That's exactly what we wanted to happen, right? Because if you go back to, let's see, our save journal here, when we create our object, we set a title, thought, image, time added, all of that. All right, congratulations. So it is working. It's always like a miracle when things work in programming, isn't it? Even though we are confident that we did things right, but you know how it goes. It's always a good excuse to celebrate. So go ahead and celebrate, be happy. All right, so this is working now. Because we have here an image URL, that means we have the actual image. To do that, to go and see it, let's go to our storage. All right. And we should see, there we go, there is journal images. If we click there, we should see my image, and there we go, that gibberish, which is the time that we added, appended to it. It even gives us the size of the image, the type, and when it was added. If we click inside there, we should see, and there is the image that we added. Very good. Very good. So I'm very happy that we were able to get this to work, and I hope it wasn't that difficult. Of course, there was a lot of coding, but if you were able to follow along, you should have no problem. Okay. Now, if you're having some issues there, make sure you see what problems are you having and rewatch the videos where we wiring things up. That's very important. All right. Very good. So I will leave at that for now, because now this is indeed the list activity where we're going to show all of these items that we're adding, all of these journals that we're writing, and we're going to do that at a later video. But what we're going to do next is fix a few things, especially make sure that users can actually log in. That's very important. That's what we're going to be doing next. All right. Congratulations, and I'll see you in the next video.